I'm Cari Mitchell. I'm from the English Collective of Prostitutes. Thank you very much for inviting us to this event today. We're going to start by watching a short 2.5-minute film.
No, you can't have sweets for dinner. Because your teeth will fall out, that's why. We'll talk about it later. I really gotta go. I love you too. Bye.
Here. Oh, thank you, love.
Have you heard anything from that client?
No, nothing.
No?
How are you getting on with your night class?
Really enjoying it. Yeah, it's really good.
Good.
It's quite funny, actually, because when Ella comes home from school, she tells me about her day and then I tell her about mine.
Sweet.
What about you? How's your mum?
She's much better this week. My sister's with her and she's making a fuss of her.
Is she?
Oh, she loves that.
Does she?
Yes.
Yeah. Are we expecting anyone, Simone? Because your teeth will fall out, that's why. We'll talk about it later. I love you too.
Okay, so that's the situation with the sex industry, with the laws. But just to tell you a little bit about ourselves, we're a network of sex workers who work or have worked in different areas of the sex industry, both on the street and indoors. And we campaign for decriminalisation and safety. We also provide daily support to sex workers who come to us with with a wide range of issues, including fighting legal cases which challenge discrimination and establish prostitute women's right to protection against violence. During the pandemic, because other sex worker organisations have been doing a fantastic job of raising money for sex workers in need, we've been prioritising pressing the government to end criminalisation, and also for a moratorium on raids and arrests, and for easily accessible benefits to be made available to sex workers. Because we're not recognised as workers, most of us have not been able to access those benefits which we should all be entitled to. And so thousands of us have faced the terrible dilemma of either stopping working and not having any money to put food on the table for our families, or continuing working and making those same families and the wider community vulnerable to us picking up the virus. So it's just a terrible dilemma. Okay, so now I'm going to describe from the point of view of sex workers, what would be the likely impact of decriminalisation of sex work? Any proposal for a change in policy has to encompass the experience of sex workers. Policy and prostitution law, that is. And here are some of the benefits of decriminalisation, drawing on the experience of women in our network. Urgent action is needed to address the obvious injustices that sex workers face to decriminalise prostitution. So decriminalisation would increase safety by ensuring that sex workers could work together and collectively organise and assert our rights for better working conditions. Police crackdowns break up safety networks. Women describe how they're running for the police on the street and are forced into isolated areas where they're at greater risk of attack. And brothel keeping laws make it illegal for 2 or more sex workers to work together, as you saw in the film. That film really focuses on the injustice. And sex workers are forced, as I said, to choose between keeping ourselves safe and possible arrest, or avoiding a criminal record and putting ourselves in danger, as these 2 women show. And for sex workers, this isn't a theoretical debate. In 2013, a woman, a young mother named Mariana Popa, was murdered in the wake of a draconian policing operation, which saw hundreds of women arrested and given prostitution cautions all around the country. 2 of Britain's most senior police chiefs at the time acknowledged that operations to tackle the trade are counterproductive and likely to put women's lives at risk. But unfortunately, little has changed in that time, and police crackdowns do continue, including now during the pandemic, which is a complete it's always a complete outrage. Worse still, when sex workers report violence, we face prosecution ourselves, while little is done to go after our attackers. One woman who bravely contacted the police when, after she was attacked in her flat, people came into her flat and she was attacked there. She was working with others, but she did go forward to the police. And what she received from the police was a letter saying that any female at the address now who is found at the same address in the future is very likely to be arrested for brothel keeping. And that's because she was working with others for her safety. She had no choice but to move on. And she also later received a deportation order. She was a migrant woman. She received a deportation order, which was only overturned after a campaign that we spearheaded. And police resources are being squandered raiding and arresting sex workers, with migrant workers especially targeted. It was only after a 4-month campaign by our organisation that charges were eventually dropped in 2020 against 2 Brazilian women who were charged with permitting premises to be used for prostitution, and they were merely working together for safety. Decriminalisation of sex work would also enhance health. Researchers found that the police using possession of condoms as evidence of prostitution makes it harder for women to insist that clients use condoms. It's also harder for us to access appropriate health care. Who can afford to tell their GP that they're working in the sex industry? However, on the grounds of health and safety, the Royal College of Nursing has consistently voted by over 90% of its membership in favour of decriminalisation of sex work. Following decriminalisation in New Zealand, sex workers have demanded that employers provide better health and safety, and in fact, the legislation comes under health and safety. As a result of decriminalisation there, more than 90% of sex workers feel they have increased employment rights, occupational safety, health rights, and legal rights. Crucially, decriminalisation will make it possible for sex workers to organise collectively to improve our working conditions, not only improve those working conditions, but get a pension, form and join trades unions. Criminalisation forces sex workers underground, where we are more likely to be exploited as we have no legal recourse. And in fact, strippers have begun to unionise and in one case have won worker status. Decriminalisation is urgent as thousands more women, particularly mothers, are relying on sex work to survive and provide for our loved ones. Austerity cuts in the previous government targeted women. 80% of austerity cuts targeted women and mothers in particular. And government policies of benefit sanctions and the introduction of that terrible universal credit have deliberately caused destitution. Everybody knows about that dreadful benefit. Decriminalisation of sex work would, for the first time, ensure some recognition of sex workers' contribution to the survival of families, and in some cases whole communities, particularly in countries of the South. It is no accident that most sex workers are mothers, mostly single mothers. Sex work provides a higher wage and the kind of flexibility, that's often absent in other jobs. Horrifyingly, some mothers who've turned to sex work to make ends meet have had their children removed by social services, taken into care.
To continue watching this video, click the link in the top left or in the description below, or visit iai.tv for more debates and talks from the world's leading thinkers on today's biggest ideas.